morning and welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here and have a chance to speak with you.
I am so delighted to have you. Ladies and gentlemen who will be viewing this interview, let me formally introduce to you Dr. Robert A. Harris. Dr. Harris has a sort of formal role in our interview series because he was one of the very fine composers that we commissioned back in 2008 to compose a piece for us. And the specific piece that he composed for us was April Rain Song, a setting of just exquisitely tender poetry by Langston Hughes. I should also make the disclaimer that Dr. Harris and I go back a ways, probably close to 30 years or so. And
we were mere children then, don't you know?
Well, yes, right. I was toddling along, stumbling every now and then. I stumble now, but it's not because I'm tumbling, I'm toddling. But yeah, we've known each other, and I consider him a dear friend and a mentor as well. A mentor, a friend, a role model, and all of those things. So happy to have you here with us, Dr. Harris.
It's my pleasure, as I said earlier.
Yeah. So I'm wanting to sort of get into our interview by asking you to revisit our commission of you. It was maybe even 2007 when we actually issued the commission to compose this piece, and we premiered it in 2008. Gorgeous piece, April Rain Song. So you were at that time on the faculty at Northwestern, Director of Choral Organizations, as you had been since 1977, is that correct?
1977, yes.
Right. And you continued until your retirement from that post in 2012. So you had all of these things that you were doing in connection with leading that program and doing choral education and choral art. And then you have been throughout your career a very active composer. And yet, when we called on you and asked if you would be so kind as to write something for us, you consented. So tell us about that.
Well, I didn't only consent, I dropped everything because I felt that to be very, very important and very significant. And I was very pleased and honored for you to have given me, to make that offer. So whatever was on the drawing board had to go to the back burner because James Kinchin had requested something for his wonderful chorus in Milwaukee.
Well, you're so kind, and your generosity of heart continued in our receiving that wonderful work and being able to perform it, and just absolutely loving it. And to be honest with you, I'll tell you a secret. I'm looking at programming it again in the very near future.
Yeah, whenever we can get ourselves back together and have our choruses working again. Yes.
Yeah. And that's a challenge for us.
Yes.
Yeah. Although I want to paraphrase, as I have before, the old spiritual line from the old spiritual that says, "There's a better day coming."
There's a better day coming.
I believe that.
All right.
I believe that. Yes, sir. So when you looked through all of the possibilities and the parameter that we set up in the commission was to do a set of text from the Harlem Renaissance, which was an extremely fertile period of arts and letters in African American and American life in this country in the early 20th century. What drew you to this particular text, and maybe even what drew you to this particular poet?
It was just in going through an anthology of poetry of Black writers during the Harlem Renaissance period. I was just, and of course Langston Hughes is, you can't go wrong. And that text just kind of popped out at me. In fact, there were two. The other was one by James Weldon Johnson called "Beauty That Is Never Old." And in fact, I made a setting of both of those pieces. And I had intended to send you both of them because, but I still should send you the other one. I don't know. I should.
You should.
If I ever had it, yes. In fact, I was just looking at it recently. But there was just something about the poignancy of that April Rain Song piece that just a poem that just struck me, and I thought about the chorus. I thought about your personality. I thought about the personality of the choir as I have heard them. And I just thought that would be a good piece. And again, I was moved by the text. First of all, I'm a text-generated composer. The text always is the thing that I'm not the kind of person who writes music and then tries to find words to fit that. The words, I read them over, I mull them over, I tinker with ideas as to what they might do. And then of course, that text just generated that music. And I hopefully it was a good marriage between the text and the music.
Great marriage. Great marriage. Yeah, so I don't know whether you happen to have that text handy. I do.
Okay, I don't, but I will.
Okay. Yeah.
I will let you go ahead and.
Yeah, I would love to share it. I'd love to share it. And I agree with you just completely. Even as you read the text, it almost invites music. Let the rain kiss you. Let the rain beat upon your head with silver liquid drops. Let the rain sing you a lullaby. The rain makes still pools on the sidewalk. The rain makes running pools in the gutter. The rain plays a little sleep song on our roof at night. And I love the rain.
That's beautiful poetry, isn't it?
Isn't it? Oh gosh, yes.
I mean, it's just so, you can just sense it and feel it. It just becomes real. I mean, you can close your eyes and you can visualize everything he's trying to say. The man was a master with words.
Yes. And certainly deserves the place that he's been accorded in American literature, and as one of the foremost poets of the 20th century. So you, at some point, as you entertained how this text would influence your musical setting, you decided, for example, to do it for unaccompanied choir, as opposed to choir with accompaniment, say piano accompaniment, which is most customary when we have accompaniment for our choirs. So what led you in the direction of that decision?
I just felt that I wanted just a pure choral sound for the piece, that I wanted to try to use the nuances and colors of the choir, knowing that how varied that can be. I really feel that next to an organ, the choir has the opportunity to make more colors than any other instrument. And I knew that the text itself lent itself to coloristic challenges. And I just didn't want to. I just felt that without, I didn't need a piano. I just felt that at this point I wanted to write an unaccompanied, a pure choral piece in the almost in the Renaissance tradition.
Well, it certainly was the absolute correct choice, which I think is a huge compliment to you to hear a setting and to say that, having heard your setting, having had the chance to study your setting, which I did as a conductor, and then taught it to Milwaukee Choristers and conducted it in performance, that I could not think of it having been done in a different way. So I think you hit the mark. And thank you for coming to hear the premiere of the performance. We were honored to have you.
Well, it's an honor to be there, and I've also, you will recall, been to other of your performances, in fact, and have enjoyed them very, very much. I think the chorus is a wonderful chorus, and you, with your leadership, they make wonderful music.
Well, I thank you for that. And I guarantee you that as they watch, every one of my choristers is smiling at accolades coming from somebody who has had the opportunity to make music on all of the high planes that you have had that opportunity. So I mentioned you were being at Northwestern from 1977 to 2012 when you retired. Also, before that, you were on faculty for some years at Michigan State, yes?
Yeah, that's true. I was director of the choral program at Michigan State from 1970 to 77 when I came to Northwestern. And prior to that, I was on the faculty at Wayne State University in Detroit from 1964 to 70.
Mm-hmm.
And before that, taught public school music in Detroit for 4 years.
And Detroit is home for you, yes?
Detroit is home. Mm-hmm.
Yes, yes. Wow.
Mm-hmm.
So to Northwestern, and I want to just say a little bit about Northwestern because everybody's heard of Northwestern, and it has a superb reputation, but people may not know specifically about the music program and specifically about the choral program there. Northwestern is one of our, meaning the United States, major music schools, and it's highly reputed, highly regarded, and for every good reason. And you had the opportunity as director of choral organizations to do just incredible choral work, which I was privileged when I could get down there to actually sit in the audience and listen to some of the great masterworks. What are some of the pieces that you did with your forces there at NU?
Well, I was very fortunate to be in that position and to have the kind of talent available to me that the university afforded, that the Benin School of Music afforded, and to also have access to a wonderful symphony orchestra. And I think the things that stick out in my mind that are most memorable and the things I feel very good about were the major works that we did with chorus and orchestra. Mm-hmm. And we of that genre of music, we did almost all the major works. I mean, when I say all, I mean many, many major works. I mean, we from everything from the Baroque all the way through the 20th century. You know, we did the Bach Magnificat, we did the B minor Mass with orchestra. We did St. John Passion. We did Mozart Requiems in 3 different versions. We did a lot of the Haydn masses. We did Beethoven Mass in C. We did the Missa Solemnis. We did the Verdi Requiem. We did the War Requiem of Benjamin Britten. We did Belshazzar's Feast of William Walton. We did the Hodier of Vaughan Williams. I mean, I could go on and on about Dawn and Alby's Pacem of Vaughan Williams. All of the major works. We did premieres of a piece of a composer in Great Britain by the name of Richard Blackford. We did the American premiere of his piece called Mirror of Perfection. We also did the American premiere of his piece called what's the name of that piece? Not in Our Time, which we gave the premiere in Millennium Park to an audience of thousands of people. I could just go on and on about the opportunities that were afforded me by virtue of the talent and of orchestrally and chorally of that university. With great voices, a great orchestra, which was under the conductorship of Victor Yampolsky. It was an amazing run, and I think at this point, having been retired, I'm not in any way looking to go back to work, but I think having the opportunity. I missed the opportunity of doing music on that level, you know, doing those kinds of works, because even in doing church work in smaller ensembles, those opportunities are not there anymore. So that's one of the things I really miss and appreciate having had the opportunity to do.
I can understand that, especially because you did them so superbly. You know,
thank you.
You created jewels for the ear each time you did one of those performances, and I can remember sitting there in Pick Steiger Hall and just sort of bathing myself, not just in the sound, but also in the conception of each of those as a piece of art that you brought forth, and what a marvelous thing that was. Now, I want to ask you about your composing, because the composing is like a house with many, many doors, and many people get into it through those different doors, and everybody has a somewhat different story to tell. And maybe I jumped the gun a little bit, so let's ask you first to talk about how you and music came to be together, how you and music fell in love and created a partnership for life.
I don't think I chose music. I think music chose me. I
Mm,
think, I think that was, it may sound kind of melodramatic, but I think that was one of my purposes for being on the earth, really, was
mm,
to make music, because it's a gift, So I started off as a kid, taking piano lessons like most kids, and being involved in music all my life, all the way through elementary school. Let me stop and say, Detroit, growing up in Detroit, was the school system of Detroit was a mecca for music education. Um, Many, many, many major artists in all genres of music came through that school system, because we had music from the first grade through the 12th grade. Every school, and not only did we have music, but we had music that was taught by music specialists. Um, it was not the art teacher or the gym teacher also doing the music. It was a music specialist. And in elementary school, we not only did we have vocal and choral music, but we had a string teacher and a wind teacher. So we had an orchestra and a band by two different people who specialized in wind and orchestral music. So I had all that opportunity all the way through school, and then same thing through high school. Um, I think the creative process came late. I think it started when I was in college. I didn't start doing anything creatively until then. And that was a time when I formed a group of a quartet. We were of doing some things, kind of like, you remember the Four Freshmen and the High-Lows and groups like that. So
mhm,
some
mhm.
vocal jazz kind of stuff in those days. And I started off by doing arrangements, and then that kind of took me into some composition. I'll never forget the first piece that I ever composed was a setting of the first three or four verses of Saint John um, in the beginning. Was it in the beginning? No, no,
Mhm. In the
I forget
beginning
what it
was
was.
the word.
Yeah, yeah, whatever it was, of John, and I wrote this for Men's Glee Club, because I was in the Glee Club at Wayne State University. And I thought I had written a real great piece, and I showed it to our conductor, and he said, "Well, just keep on trying." And so,
So how did that make you feel?
well, it was okay. I mean, who knows? But anyway, that was my first opus, and that led to, and then I had a wonderful teacher at Wayne State University, a woman by the name of Ruth Wiley, who was an amazing teacher and composer, and her influence and her being a person who gave me great encouragement was the impetus for going on and doing things. In fact, it was she who suggested that I go to Eastman for my
Mm,
graduate work and start working with her teacher, which was a man by the name of Bernard Rogers. But
mhm,
I had great, and I had a chance to study with Bernard Rogers and Henry Cowell at Eastman School of Music, and then
mm, mm,
um, so that was the start. And primarily my output has been choral,
mhm,
but I have done some orchestral pieces as well, and also some chamber music.
mhm. How did you discover your voice, so to speak, as a composer? Was it just sort of always there, and it was a matter of refining your musical thought, of refining your technical mastery, or was there some point where a kind of Robert Harris voice emerged, and it was like, yeah, this is me? How did that happen?
I think that may be the case. That there was I am told by people that they can hear my music and know that it was mine without my having told them that it was. I mean, from the
Mhm.
standpoint of the way I use harmonic color, the way I use harmonic movement, and that kind of thing. But I'll tell you who my best composition teacher was.
Hmm.
A fellow who was born in 1685 and died in 1750.
Ah,
Yeah,
John. I mean,
John.
Johann.
Yeah, John Brooke.
Yes, John Brooke.
Yes, and I'll tell you why I say that, because what my harmonic study was based on the 371 chorales of Bach.
Mhm.
I mean, I must have had to analyze 250 of them. And the thing that I learned from that was how to write lines so that there's beauty of line in every part, not just the soprano with everybody else supporting. And so in my own writing, I take a lot of time and care crafting linear movement, which in itself yields to the harmonic palette. But I want altos and tenors to feel like they've got important stuff to do and melodic stuff to do and expressive stuff to do, not just fill in the harmony. You know? And so I think my study of the chorales taught me that. And I think even right now, if I come to a stumbling block, I'd say, what would John Bach do right here? You know, oh, okay, let me think about that. And then of course that kind of stimulates me to try to do something else. But I spend a lot of time crafting lines and also the idea of harmonic movement and harmonic color, which I think is kind of my way of doing this, kind of unique for me. I mean, that's kind of I guess it's a decent way of putting it. But anyway, I think I've crafted my voice in that way.
So how would you talk further about the uniqueness of your harmonic process?
Well, as I said before, everything is generated by the text. You know, in the piece that I did for you, I mean, as I said before, I pondered those words a lot and think about what kind of sounds can I make that will really capture what this word or these words are trying to say. And so that's what kind of generates my harmonic movement. There are times when it's rich, the palette can be rich. I mean, where I can be in a piece that's a SATB piece, there may be a certain segment of that would only be 2 parts going on, and then all of a sudden that may yield into a 7-part chord or something if I need that kind of color to make that thing happen. So it's text generated to a great extent.
And obviously, as you describe how you go about doing what you do, it infers some choices that you've made. So, for example, you have chosen to do your work within a context of tonality. Huh?
It is tonality, but it's extended tonality.
Yeah.
It's tonal, but it's not key centered necessarily. So my harmonic palette is richer than that. It's tonal, but not key centered. Let's put it that way.
Yeah. So besides the influence of the great master J.S. Bach, are there other composers whose work that you have come to know that have been influential for?
Well, yeah, you know, in of course, in being a conductor too, and having a chance to study and to perform the works of the masters, you're going to be highly influenced. I mean, I think I could, in a way, as far as style is concerned, my music has a lot of structure and form. I mean, I'm very much aware of form, and of course that comes from studying Mozart, studying Haydn, studying Beethoven, studying structure. I mean, maybe that's a better word, that I'm very, very involved with structure and form, so that everything seems to have to make sense, that hopefully that it's not tightly knitted from that standpoint. It doesn't wander, I think. And I'm very much aware of the formal aspects of it, because that again is a part of my training, you know, as being in compositional study. And of course, in studying, you learn a lot in studying the music of the masters. You know, I mean, you can, it's much better than trying to learn everything out of a book. You know, what would Mozart do here? You know, look, how did he do this? Why is this so beautifully crafted? You know, so you learn a lot from that standpoint. So structure and form is very important to me as well.
Yeah. And as you were talking, I thought about a composer, at least one that came to mind for me, and you hadn't mentioned his name yet. Uh, I thought about the work of Johannes Brahms,
Yes.
and how absolutely infatuated he was with this whole idea of structure and organization, and having things fit together in such a way that it combined what I would term as his romantic sensibilities with his respect for the people like Mozart.
For classical structure, yeah.
Yeah, classical structure,
Yeah.
yeah.
And of course, he built up on Beethoven, who was a romantic classicist, you know.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
so, yeah, so he's just an extension. And
Yeah.
have you ever thought about the fact, too, since we've mentioned these people, of what in the world was in the water in Germany that they could produce such a lineage of fine composers going all the way back to the 16th century, all the way through Brahms and even all the way through Hindemith, that whole
Yeah.
lineage of Haydn, Mozart, Beethoven, Brahms. I mean, just and in those composers, if you remember, that this is all classical structure,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
even through Brahms, even in Hindemith. I mean, it's tightly knit. You know, it doesn't have it has its own tightness, its own thing that molds it. And I often wonder. I said someone should write a doctoral thesis on the lineage of German composers and ask what was in the water there that this whole line of people was produced all the way through the Bachs into the classicists.
Yeah. Well, I tell you, that's a great question. Except my choristers, many of the people who were in the organization back a quarter of a century or so ago, we made a trip to Europe, which included Germany, included Austria, even a ceremony in Innsbruck, where I was presented with some spring water, some Tyrolean spring water, and I was hoping that would be the water that would sort of unleash my own creativity in that way. It didn't work. No, but seriously, it is something to ponder how all of that genius was concentrated in that one sort of national stream. Is it?
And you know, another composer that we have to mention too of our time, who also whose music is so tightly crafted, is that of William Dawson.
Yes.
You know,
Yes.
I mean,
Yes.
there's a classical orientation in his music too that is readily apparent. That you know,
Yes.
this man understands craft, he understands structure,
Mm-hmm.
and you know, and I think all the great composers had that.
Yeah, yeah. No, that's so true for Dawson. Even Dawson's earlier choral work, the material that was published by Fitzsimons in Chicago, even that, you look at something as seemingly simple as King Jesus is a listening,
Right.
or something like, and it's still one of my favorite pieces, period. His My Lord, What a Morning.
Right.
Yeah. Wow. Yes.
Right.
So I am happy that you talked about how the works of other composers, particularly as you experienced them and came in contact with them in your role as a choral conductor, influenced your composition. And I'm sure that you could probably say it works the other way around, that being a composer yourself heightened your sensitivity to what composers were saying, whose works you were preparing and conducting.
Well, you know, that's an interesting statement because I've had friends who say to me, you know what you are? You're a composer who conducts. Then I have other friends who say you're a conductor who composes. And I find that they're united, you know, because I think being a person who composes, it gives me a theoretical way of looking at score study. You know, that perhaps, and not that my achievements would be any different than anybody else's who didn't have that particular thought process, but when I look at a piece of music to study it as for conducting it, I look at it as a composer, and I'm looking at it as to how he, you know, what was he thinking here? Trying to put myself into his mindset, and then of course, when it transfers, then I'm conducting. I find that the two have been very, very closely knit.
And that doesn't surprise me at all, not at all. You know, not that we should necessarily, you know, sort of count beans, but I think it will be very interesting, very illuminating for those who are viewing our interview to know some of the publishing houses who have taken Robert Harris compositions and published them and made them available to the wider musical community. So what, I'm not asking you to brag, but what are some of the publishers who publish your work?
Well, it's Oxford University Press, Boozy and Hawkes, Mark Foster, Alliance, Walton, let me think, in St. Louis. It'll come back to me in a second, but in Shawnee, shows. So I've had several good houses that have chosen to, that I've been fortunate that have picked up some of my pieces. Morning Star. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Morning Star, yes,
Mm-hmm.
yes. Wow, and that's an honor. That's an honor as well, and it speaks to some extent, obviously, to the quality of what you do, but it also speaks to your reputation.
And you'll be happy to know that at the present time, Oxford is looking at the April Rain song. They're thinking about, to see if they want to publish that piece.
Oh, that'll be so.
So let's keep our fingers crossed, because if so, Milwaukee Choristers and your name will be at the top of the page.
Wow, that would be so great. Tell Oxford the only decision to be made is when to do it.
If I had my choice, I wish it were that easy.
Yeah, I know. They have many things to consider, and obviously the same pandemic that keeps us from pulling 150 people in a room and having them sing together also has some considerable tangible effect on their decisions to publish. So I understand, but that would be great. Thanks for letting me. So we have to look out.
I'll keep you posted on that one.
Okay, that is great. Now, Dr. Harris, you have also, besides the post that you have held and held with such distinction at Northwestern, you've also had an opportunity to conduct other groups. You have done residencies at other universities. You have even conducted abroad. So just kind of walk us through some of those opportunities that you've had to have your artistry in places other than your institution where you were on faculty.
Well, I had a chance to be a guest at the University of Texas at Austin. I've also, I was a guest professor. At the University of South Africa, and University of South Africa in Pretoria. I was a guest professor there. I've also had a chance to conduct and do workshops and conducting workshops in Argentina, and also in Colombia. I've had the opportunity to work in the Republic of China, also in Hong Kong. I've had the opportunity to work several places around the world. The music has afforded me some wonderful opportunities. Yeah. And of course, a lot of places domestically as well.
Yes.
Several all states and that kind of thing.
Yeah, that's an impressive listing. So out of those international opportunities, are there any that stand out I guess they all are special, but in a particularly special way?
Yeah, there was one professional chorus in Korea, the Incheon Chorale,
Yeah.
that I was invited to guest conduct, and um, they afforded me 5 days of rehearsals to prepare with a professional chorus to show you how fine this chorus was. This was their job.
Mm.
Okay, this was their job. There were 42 people in the choir. And the conductor told me that they had lost a soprano the year before, and they had 102 applicants for her position.
Wow.
So the thing is, and this will really amuse you. I went in after the first rehearsal, and I was blown away because I'm thinking, what am I going to do for the next 4 days?
Wow.
What,
What a problem to have.
I have never been in front of a group that professional before in my life. And so that was the morning rehearsal. And then we also had one in the afternoon, and we had 4 days left. And so at the end of the afternoon rehearsal, they said, "We want to take you out tonight." I said, "No, I'm sorry, I can't go. I'm tired." But what I had to go was go back to my room and restudy that music to see what could I bring to it that I hadn't thought of before, because everything I thought was going to happen had already happened. But it was kind of a very, very important thing for me, because the good master above decided, I'm gonna have to give you a little bit more,
Mm.
you know? And so the power up there gave me some new ideas and some new thoughts. In other words, it elevated my thinking to a level that I had not had to go to before, because I had never been confronted with a chorus that was that professional. So, but it was a remarkable time for me to have been in a situation like that, and to have to dig deeper and pray a whole lot,
Mm.
and to get to get to the point where, yeah. But it was an amazing chorus.
Wow. Oh, it sounds amazing. Sounds amazing.
Yeah.
And as daunting as you are describing it as well. Yeah. So look, I want to inject a little bit of my personal experience and go to the other end of the spectrum, as you know, if we're thinking in terms of something linear. Um, One of the things that I have been so honored by with you is those summers back when you were at Northwestern, that my schedule allowed it, and my circumstance allowed it, that you allowed me to come and slip into your choir, your summer choir, which I think for our viewers, we would correctly describe as a kind of omnibus y'all come group that had everything from top level graduate singers who were there in the summer singing, and people from your community choir whose only claim to fame was their love for choral music and their desire to make it with you. And a misfit like me that you allowed to slip up into the bass section.
You brought your remarkable gifts to that. I was very pleased to have you.
But I was so honored to be there, and by the way, it afforded me, out of the many benefits, at least a couple that I will name. One is the opportunity to be reminded what it's like on the other side, because you know, we're in front of choirs all the time. We are running rehearsals. They start when we start them. They stop when we stop them. We go back and do this section. We move on to the next piece, and we do all of these things, and we are totally running that. And every now and then, I think it's not a bad thing for us to be on the other side of that, and to be reminded how that feels. And of course, the second thing is to see the kind of teaching and artistry that you brought to that situation, which, and that to get back to my first framing, that's sort of like at the opposite end of what the Incheon experience was like for you. You know, here you've got this sort of motley crew of people who want to sing. And I'll be honest with you, at the very beginning of the rehearsal cycle, you know, there's some roughness there. I mean, there is, to be sure. But by the time we got to the end of it and to the concert, it was always something that we were proud of and something that was a credit to us. So to talk about what it's like to be in that kind of choral environment.
You mean with a summer chorus kind of thing?
Yes, yes, yes.
I think you start and you have to quickly come to the conclusion of what's the most you're going to get.
Mhm.
You know, what's the best you can get. And you try to work for that. You keep pushing them. You keep pushing and pushing and pushing. I don't think I've ever in any way relinquished my standards as to what I wanted. It's always striving to try to get to that point. But you have to eventually come to the point where you realize, okay, this is it at this point. You can only push people so far.
Mhm.
But I think I feel good about what you mentioned too, that even in the summer choir, by the time we got to the concert, it was creditable.
Mhm.
You know, and we made some good music. And that was because those people were there because they wanted to be there. It's not like choir in school where some of the singers are only there because they have to be there. These were a group of 60 or 70 people who wanted to be there in the summer, who looked forward to it, and who would be willing to give their all to help you to get what you wanted to get. You know, so this was the dynamic is different. You know. And so you can push them so far, you can cajole, you can joke along, but you never relinquish what you're looking for to be your goal. And, you know, and we never do we get perfection. You know, we just keep striving and striving and striving. You know, because regardless to, you know, and we know this too from having worked with some of the people we've worked with. You know, I'll never forget a saying. I'll never forget this because it was one of the most inspiring things I'd ever heard. I was doing the Missa Solemnis under Mr. Shaw. And we worked on it, we worked on it. And just before, you know, Mr. Shaw always gave a little talk before you went on stage. And I'll never forget when we got to the point where we were getting ready to go, he said, "And ladies and gentlemen, before you go, I want to share something with you." He said, "This will be my 18th performance of the Missa Solemnis of Beethoven. And I hope you will have as many chances to fail as I've had."
Wow. The great show.
Oh,
Yes.
I mean, that's just,
Mm.
woo, you know. So that was a memorable experience. Another memorable experience was having the chance to work one-on-one with Julius Herford on the B minor Mass. I mean, things like that, you know, just, yeah.
Wow.
But I'll never forget that comment from Mr. Shaw made. That was just, in other words, you strive and you strive and you strive, but you never get there. You just keep on plodding.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, gosh, you know, that perspective, and of course he had the ability to put a lot of things into perspective in his teaching and in his at the time that he wrote letters to his chorale and all of the, you know, dear people, you know.
I have copies of a lot of those letters.
Wow.
I'll share them with
you. I would like that.
Yeah.
I'd like that very much. So a couple of other thoughts, questions, things that I would invite you to chat about a little bit. How does, you know, and I feel particularly comfortable asking this, in that both you and I are African Americans. How does that in any way, whether it's roots, it's culture, its experiences, its sensibilities, or whatever, how does that factor, if at all, into your composing? Or I should even say, if you are aware of how it does into your composing, because at some level, many things enter in that people who compose are not necessarily conscious of. It just flows out of their souls.
I think however those influences are, they're unconscious because
Okay.
because, you know, I am African American, and that's been my life's experience.
Mhm.
So who you are and what you are and how you've lived, and I've I've lived, and I've had, well, I'm a product of the Black church, but I'm also a product of what I would call Black high church. You know,
Mhm.
I remember, for instance, when I was a kid, in the church, that my father was a chorister, and it was in those days when I was a kid that um, I first heard Messiah. I first heard Elijah. I first heard the Dubois Seven Last Words. And
Wow.
this is by Black folk singing music of that level and that caliber, with a conductor who knew it and an organist who had a doctorate degree and all of that. And so, the way I was influenced by the sounds of the chorus and the kinds of music and literature they did obviously became very, very important to me. you know and of course, and hearing the great Dawson and Burley spirituals sung beautifully as artistic pieces. I mean, seeing how they worked to strive to get the very best out of them musically, as well as emotionally. All these things have basically became a part of who I am. you know and so those experiences, I'm sure I bring to whatever I do and bring it to the music. And of course, musical elements itself, like harmony and rhythm and all that kind of stuff, which is questionable from this, because everybody can have that. But I think
Mhm.
the totality of who one is, I think, becomes evident in the way that he creates his music.
Mhm. And that makes sense. And of course, I have once more retreated from video in the interest of minimizing instability. But I'm sitting here nodding as you say that, because the Black high church experience is something that I'm aware of as well. And uh, and that may be foreign to a lot of people, either because they haven't in the course of life experienced it, or because today uh, caricatures, and I don't necessarily use that in an unkind way,
Right.
but caricatures abound in the media, even in the entertainment media. So if you've got a Black church, then this is what's going on, and it's got to be this kind of music, and people have to be standing up, clapping and swaying. And that represents certainly one facet of the Black worship experience, but you and I know of the experiences of which you spoke that are much richer, uh, and, uh, and not like what the popular
Mhm.
perceptions are.
Perceptions are right.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So here is a tough question for you, maybe not. So what's next, or what is it that you maybe haven't even picked up the pen or whatever to start writing, but are wanting to write in your future? What compositions do you have that have yet to sort of come into being?
What I want to do, I want to write some art songs
Hmm.
for voice and either voice and accompaniment.
Mhm.
And I'm also in the process now with one of our colleagues that you know well, Miss Judith Beatty. Um,
Yes,
yeah,
yes,
she's become an editor for me, and we're in the
yes.
process now. I'm re-editing a lot of the pieces that I've done in the past, and getting rid of flaws and making them tighter and better. And Judith has been very instrumental in doing some formatting for me in that. Uh,
Hmm.
so that's one of the things I'm. I've written some very small pieces. I haven't written anything big. I think the last big piece I wrote was the Gloria, which you've heard me
Hmm.
do. So I want to do some smaller things, but probably some chamber music, and some vocal chamber music kind of pieces. I want to do some art songs. I've been compiling some texts that I want to do to maybe do a major, somewhat major work of like a cycle.
Hmm. Hmm.
So that's. But right now I haven't done much at all. I've just done some smaller things, some church music things and like things like that. I've written a few anthems, which I'm in the process of um, editing.
Yeah, because we certainly were so blessed by uh, your composition for us, uh, the April Rain song, which is just such a gorgeous, such a such a beautiful and reflective piece, reflective and romantic, if I can use those two descriptors.
Well, I'm happy that you all enjoyed it very much. It pleases me.
Well, we have enjoyed this opportunity to chat, and I want to thank you. I'm going to risk coming back in the video here. Uh, we just really appreciate this opportunity. It's just been an enlightening and illustrative moment, even for me, uh, who knows you for decades now and considers you just a great friend. I've learned some things as well as
Well,
I hope.
I've always considered you a brother by another mother.
Yes, yes, I like that. I like that. Thank you, Dr. Robert A. Harris.
Thank you, Dr. Kenton. Thank you very much.